All right, we begin with breaking news just coming in. U.S. President Donald Trump has hinted that more secondary sanctions could be imposed, and this comes hours after announcement of additional 25% tariff on India, and that is on top of the 25% tariff announced previously, citing its continued purchases of Russian oil. Now, during a press briefing at the White House on being asked as to why he was signaling India out, despite other countries like China also buying Russian oil, Trump said it's only been 8 hours. Now, here's what he said.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours. So let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions
you're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to
Mr.
see so much secondary sanctions.
Now, he also hinted that his administration could impose more similar tariffs on China while answering question on the Indian penalties. Listen to this.
On the India penalties, do you have any similar plans to enact more tariffs on China as it relates
Could
to
happen.
their purchases?
Could happen. Depends on how we do. Could happen. It may happen. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you yet, but we did it with India. We're doing it probably with a couple of others. One of them could be China, yes.
Now, the White House order, however, has not mentioned China, which is another big purchaser of Russian oil. Last week, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned China that it can also face new tariffs if it continued buying Russian oil. Now, this is the latest that we're getting in. President Donald Trump has now hinted that more secondary sanctions can be imposed, and this comes hours after the announcement of additional 25% tariff on India, and that was on top of the 25% tariff that was announced previously, citing its continued purchases of Russian oil. All right, to get you all more details on the story, joining us now on the phone is our correspondent, Susan Tenani from New York. Susan, thank you so much for joining in. Now, we know that Trump had been hinting for long on imposing secondary sanctions, and now this 25% that has been signaled is on top of the already existing 25%. First of all, what is the latest that you're picking up?
Right. So this executive order would add, as you mentioned, a 25% tax on Indian exports to the U.S. In 3 weeks' time. There's a 21-day grace period. It's interesting because late in August, a U.S. delegation is expected to be in India to talk tariffs, but nonetheless, it would, at this point, add another 25% tariff to the ones that have already been applied to imports from India, which is set to begin on Thursday. Just so you can see what a viable partner India is for the United States, through June this year alone, India exported some $56.3 billion in goods to the U.S., making it the 12th largest U.S. trading partners. And those exports include medical products, generic drugs, telephones, among others. But what's also concerning is, while this is mostly geared towards Russia to put pressure on Russia, this 50% tariff is the highest levy on any country in the United States, let alone a U.S. ally. But also, President Trump knows there's a train coming. It is that 500% tariff that a Senate sanctions bill has envisioned for buyers of Russian oil. That bill already has 80 co-sponsors and is headed for possible vote in the Senate in September when they return from recess. So he can see the political train coming. The concern that many experts and analysts have is that they hope that, this is related to his attempt to pressure China away from its partnership with Russia, because China is helping Russia with critical technology. It's also, Ukraine showed that Chinese mercenaries are fighting the Russians near Kharkiv in Ukraine. So that's the puzzling part, whether or not, these sanctions will go through with India, but is it to pressure China mostly. But the hope is that President Trump ultimately has a strategy here, and he's not just making this decision on a whim.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that, this is to pressure Russia, and we know that this has been Donald Trump's strategy all along, that he has said that he's going to impose secondary sanctions if Russia does not back away from and stop the war. And you also mentioned China. Now, Trump has hinted that he may impose secondary sanctions on China. But the question that being raised right now is, why is U.S. selective about its approach here on sanctions on India? We know that Trump has recently said that the talks went well with the special envoy and Russian leaders, and he is about to meet Putin very soon. So all of this development coming in, and Trump just now announcing that he plans to impose new sanctions. What are the reactions coming in?
Right, and his comments really sort of, like I said, raised concerns that hopefully he has some kind of strategy here, because as we both know, several U.S. presidents have devoted time and resources to courting India as a strategic counterweight to China, as a strategic partner in the region, not only trade, but also as a strategic partner in the Indo-Pacific. And walloping India with tariffs for buying Russian oil, but giving China a pass, first of all, it's not going to betterment the relationship between Washington and New Delhi. And also, the interpretation around the world might be affected as well, where, as you mentioned, speaking tough on China but not acting it, and then, treating an ally like this, again, it just doesn't seem like a very wise strategy, considering the fact that they have sort of this 90-day grace period. But he did mention, and the White House also backed him and said that more sanctions are coming, not just against China, but possibly other countries that are buying Russian oil. Unfortunately, this has so much to do with Russia and his inability to stop the Russian war. Until now, he's going after other countries. I think many experts believe that this is unfortunate to do this to an ally.
Absolutely. And we know that tariffs is something that President Trump has been using, not just for Russia and Ukraine war, but even for Mexico and other countries. But we'll have to wait and see how these new sanctions come about, and if we see any other sanctions on other countries. But thank you so much, Susan, for joining us and giving all the latest.